Hi and welcome back. So, as you might have seen, I sometimes get a hand of a guitar that's been sort of abusive and mistreated and gone through some horrible times. I fix them up and I just, make them play nice. And 2 years ago, I bought a brand new guitar. It was probably the first brand new guitar I bought in a very, very, very long time to treat myself, basically. I've always wanted a Les Paul Junior guitar, but it's kind of hard when you're left-handed to find one. But this one company put out one, and so I thought, yeah, I can't build one of them, I know, but I can also just buy it and have it instead of taking a couple of weeks to build a guitar. I can just buy it and have it, since it's nothing special that I really want. So I'll just do it, and so that's what I did. I bought the guitar, and I was really sad to see that it wasn't a very good guitar. I mean, it wasn't a very expensive guitar, so I sort of have to blame myself for not buying higher quality, I suppose. But the thing is, I saw a bunch of reviews of this guitar online and a bunch of people telling me that this is awesome, and I kind of believed them. Which, I mean, I'm kind of ashamed to like tell you that, because I don't think you should trust influencers. But I did. Um, but I started wondering, like, what is wrong with this guitar and can I fix it? And first I was just like, oh, well, it just needs a better pickup. Because usually, you can take a bad guitar or a cheaper, less expensive guitar and you can put better pickups in it and you can make it better. But that did not help at all. If anything, it just made the problems this guitar had more visible, uh, actually. And then I started to like, okay, well, maybe I'll have to change out the electronics. So I switched the pots and the output jack and all those parts. And that didn't help either. And then started to change the nut and the bridge. And I started messing around with like different kind of quality bridges and stuff like that. And in the end, I actually even made my own bridge. Or at least that's the one you're going to see on this guitar right now. I don't know if that's what I'm going to keep in the long run. I think I'm going to keep it for now in this video series, and then, I'm going to experiment again and try to find something that is the perfect one for me. But anyway, so here's the guitar as it looks right now. And as you can maybe hear there, acoustically and electronically, it sounds kind of dead. I don't really know what to call it, but it's almost muffled, like I'm playing underwater or if I'm palm muting it or something. And I've done everything I can to try to make this guitar sound better and better. Now I have to tell you two other things before we get to what I've decided to do. This guitar had a black colored fretboard. And so I started, because it got on my hands and I had a bunch of issues with it. So I scraped it and I realized it had a completely different kind of wood under. And when I did that, I was kind of like, okay, so it's not the kind of wood they are saying on the website that it is. It's something else, because it's a completely different colored wood. And when they had painted it, it looked almost like ebony. They didn't say it was ebony, but I just felt like this isn't what they're saying that it is. And so I know I should have just been like, hey, I'm gonna contact Toman and ask them for something else. Here's the headstock. You can't really see the logo because I relicked this guitar, and I'm gonna tell you why I did that. The other thing I did was the horn was longer and sharper and didn't look the way a Les Paul Junior is supposed to look. So I cut it off. Now on their page they said that this body would be mahogany, but there is just no way this is mahogany. This is some sort of basswood-like body. It's super soft. I've built enough guitars and I've worked enough with wood building other things to be able to tell you with 100% certainty that this is not mahogany. This is not even like a cheap alternative mahogany like Chinese mahogany or something like that. This is some sort of basswood like. I cut through this like it was butter. You don't cut through mahogany like it's butter. I mean, it's not the hardest wood in the world, but it's definitely not a sponge. The neck might be mahogany because it has sort of the right color. If you look at where it's reliced, it has that little reddish, brownish mahogany kind of color. There's probably better name than reddish, brownish, but you know what I mean. Mahogany has a sort of a very typical color that is kind of easy to see. And this wood was basically just a very pale white kind of wood when I cut into it. And I started messing around with other things, like maybe the reason why it doesn't sound right is because the pickup is in the wrong place, so I moved it down, and I just I've come to the conclusion. The reason why this guitar doesn't sound the way it's supposed to is probably because its body is made of some kind of weird wood that just doesn't allow it to ring true. I have another guitar here. Now, this is a guitar I've made, and I've made it out of other kinds of woods, and it's a harder kind of wood. And I know that the pickups are not the same. This pickup is not the standard pickup that was in the guitar when I bought it. This is actually a Seymour Duncan 50s or pickup or something like that. I don't remember. I've had it in there for 2 years, so forgive me for not remembering. Maybe we'll look at it a little bit closer once we take it out. But if I play this guitar, the whole instrument vibrates and it rings out, and it has all those clear and nice overtones and parts of the sound that makes it sound alive. While this is just, I don't know if you can hear it, but it is not picking up, and I can feel the vibrations in the neck, but I can't feel them in the body. It's nothing. Whilst in this guitar, there is. Now I'm gonna cut in here a electric plugged in cut where I play both guitars, and I know this is not a comparison. I'm just trying to show you sort of the difference in sound, maybe. So don't take this as like, oh, but those are two different guitars. I know they are. It's just to try to give you the issue I have with the guitar in a sound way, because talking about how sound sounds can be really difficult. So here's the sound clip of what it sounds like. So I had this idea that I'll cut this body out and I'll just make a new body. We'll keep the electronics and the pickups and the neck and all the hardware, and we'll just, we'll just switch out the body. And then we'll have to like repaint it, and we'll have to make, make it look nice. We'll make it look like a new guitar instead of an old relic guitar, because we'll do that, and then we'll just see what happens if it gets wrecked by me playing it and loving it a bunch. And the reason why I relic this guitar, because I know some people are going to be like, oh, you're an idiot for relicking guitars or something. Like, first of all, if you like relic guitars, that's perfectly fine and okay. I like relic guitars. If you don't like them, that's fine. And if you want to tell me I'm an idiot in the comments, you can do that. I don't really care. But the reason why I reliced it was because when I filled the old pickup cavity, it was just too much work, and it wasn't worth it to match the paint. So I decided to just relic the guitar and be done with it, because I was disappointed that I couldn't get it to sound good. So now we're gonna do a perfect job, and we're gonna make a awesome guitar out of this. The thing is, I have a bunch of guitar products. There's a shelf behind you that you can't see right now, and on there is like 10 guitars or 15 guitars, and they are all things that I just haven't been that I've been not doing, that I should have been doing. I've had too much other things to do, and making videos now and things like that. So I have so many projects, and I have found an old guitar that I was going to make for a person, and the project didn't follow through. So I have this Les Paul that it was going to be. It was going to be a really cool Les Paul guitar, and I might make it one day when I get a customer who wants something, you know, that is a Les Paul fan who wants something crazy. But for now, we're going to take this blank because it's a waste. It's a beautiful piece of cherry wood, and I think it's really hard and nice, and it's been lying there for a couple of years, so it's a perfect piece of wood for a guitar. And I think that the color matching on the neck and the body is, obviously there is no finish on this, so this looks darker, but I think that in the end they're going to match up really nicely. It's going to be a little bit thinner because obviously this was supposed to have a carved top, but I think in the end it's going to be a much better, nicer looking guitar. And so we're just going to build it and see what happens, and then we're going to play it. So this is sort of my third restoration job, but this time it's a new guitar that has, that is going to be getting some love, basically. And instead of it being someone else ruined a guitar, it's me ruining a guitar, but I'm trying to fix it and make it look awesome again. So hopefully it will be cool. And we're gonna make this into an awesome guitar. I at least hope so. There are some other things on this guitar, like the neck joint here. Like, what's the point of having a neck joint like that if the carve goes there, and then it goes up, and then it goes across in a different angle? You would want it to go smoothly into it, but it doesn't. So it's like an excess carve that isn't really an excess, because you still get the different angles, and it cuts into your hand. So we're gonna fix all that too. I don't really know yet what kind of joint we're gonna have, but this is the new. You could call it my third restoration video series, and this time it's a guitar I've messed up. So even people who pretend like they know what they're doing might not know what they're doing. So we're gonna start off by just taking everything off, and then we're just gonna cut the neck off. And we're just gonna take a jigsaw, and we're just gonna cut around the neck, slice it out, basically. Okay, so let's take a look and see. You can see here the messy work I did. And this is a Seymour Duncan made in America I7B56. It's probably some sort of, I don't know. It doesn't tell me a lot, but I know that this pickup was more expensive than the one that this guitar came with, that's for sure. And yeah, so if you by the end of this likes the pickup I'm using, just know that it's the Seymour Duncan pickup that I have right here. And here is the pick guard that I made. Kind of a little bit damaged, but we're going to reuse it anyway. If you look real close, you can see that there is a line going here. I don't know if it shows up that well on the camera, but that's basically where the neck pocket goes. So this neck extends this far into the body. So when I cut this out, you're going to see me cut all the way over here. And I'm going to cut a bit away from the body because it's going to be easier to work in towards the body than to have to glue on extra pieces of wood. So I'm going to cut away to about here somewhere and around the neck. You'll see it when I do it. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to take these out, and I'm going to show you the way I would do it on a body that I cared about, but you don't really need to on a guitar that you're going to throw the body away on. But what you need is you need one of these wrenches, one with the hole and not the gripper, and you need a washer, and you need the pole that you already have to hold the bridge in place, and then you need a screwdriver. And all you do is you put the washer on the pole and through the wrench, and then you start screwing it in. And what will happen is, because you're tightening it down, instead of pushing this down into the body, you're going to pull the part out. So as I screw this down and it gets tighter and tighter, you're going to see that I'm pulling it out. And eventually it just falls out like that. So let's continue to the next part. I'm just working the knife around the edge, slowly pulling away from all sides. I'm not putting any force or anything like that, just making sure I have a tight grip on the knife so it doesn't slip away in any way, and I just gently push up on the sides. And as soon as I feel like I can grab it with my fingers, I just pop it out. Super easy. No marks on either the hardware or on the neck. Obviously you can't really see that because this neck is so damaged from my weird relicking that I did 2 years ago. So at first I was gonna take my router and I was just gonna put it on here and try to use the bearing to cut around. But I realized that it's a bit too wobbly and that there's a lot of unnecessary work involved in that. So I'm just going to take my Japanese razor blade saw and I'm just going to line it up with the neck, and I'm just going to cut along the neck like that all the way down, or maybe not all the way. I'll leave a bit because I don't need this depth for the new body, and I'll do that on both sides and then I'll come back and show you what I got. Okay, so as you can probably see, the neck goes in an angle. And I'm going to try to keep that angle as much as I can, because then I don't have to do any math and figure out the angle myself. Which, I mean, isn't very hard to do, but if you don't have to think, you know, then you don't have to think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this line here and do my marks. Now, I'm temporarily going to put in 20 mil because that is roughly 2/3 of the body, so it will go in somewhere around there. It will lose some of it afterwards because I'm gonna sand and mold this more, but it's a good place to start. So now I've made 2 marks, and so now I can line up a ruler with those 2 marks, and there I have my line that I'm going to cut, and we'll see what happens afterward. Just a quick side note before I start cutting it down. Here you can actually see the 2 woods, the body wood coming in on one side and the neck wood, because I haven't planed down the thickness there as much as I have here. And if the neck is made of mahogany and the body is made of mahogany, why is it clearly 2 different kinds of wood? Right? You can clearly see here. Now I think that the neck is the one that is made out of mahogany, but you know, either the body is made of mahogany or the neck is made of mahogany. You can choose for yourself what you believe, but yeah, look at that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run this through my planer down to this line. And the reason why I'm doing that is because that's a very easy way for me to keep this square so that the bottom is as thick on both sides. Now, the machine isn't plugged in yet. I'm just showing you what I'm going to do. I'll set this up so that my fingers can't get in between, and then I'll just run this part over and over again until it's down there. And once I'm done, I'll come back to you. But now you basically know what I'm going to do. So I'm going to just quickly show you something that happened while I was planing. And that is, I don't know if you can see this, but here, it's just basically falling off like that. And what that means is that they didn't really glue in the end of the neck, which is like a really lousy thing to do. Like, such a sloppy work. I can just stick in a tool and break it away. You see how neatly it goes off? I mean, it's kind of good for me right now because I'm taking this off, but it's no wonder that the guitar didn't sound well when it didn't even was really glued into the neck pocket. Like, you have to get a really solid and nice connection for sustain to be a thing. And thinking about this guitar more and more, I think the sustain was the real issue, that it had terrible sustain. And I know that if you watched the first video, you might have been like, I couldn't really hear anything. And that the problem was that it's a question of how it sounds live, and live it just sounds so much worse than it did in video. Did you see how I can't really show you how easily this would just fall off. So I wonder how much glue they actually used to glue this in. Anyway, I'm gonna have to clean this up a little bit and I'll be back in a second. Okay, so this is really weird. I was just gonna clean this up a little bit and then we were gonna continue our work, but then I found this weird thing here. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this, but the neck is dark right here. And it might not come across in the video, but what I think that is, I think that's resin. I think this is originally carved like both sides the same, and then they just decide, oh well, this is a left-handed, we'll just fill it in and make it like that. I could be wrong, but that to me looks a lot like there's a blob of resin under here. We'll take the heat gun and we'll start removing some of this paint and we'll take a closer look, because now I'm actually really interested in like how this is created. I'm almost feeling like some sort of detective or something. Like maybe I should, I don't know, like let people come here with their cheap guitars and I take them apart and fix them and make them better and dissect them to look for crazy stuff or something. I don't know. Feels kind of fun to like see what kind of weird solutions people have in their guitar building. Yeah, so let's take the heat gun now. Okay, so let's heat this up and remove it and see what happens. And hopefully we don't destroy the entire neck. Yeah, as you can see, hopefully you can see, I'll take you in for a closer look, I suppose. That is definitely not, oh fuck. That is definitely not wood. That's some sort of resin of some sort. I don't know if you can see that, but that's definitely resin.
Okay, so I've been working on this neck for a bit now, removing a bunch of the collars and stuff, and here you can see the scarf joint. At least I can, I don't know if you can. And then when I get down here, I can get a closer look at this. I planed this down so I would have a little bit more here, but that whole piece also fell off really easy. I just poked a little bit at it. You can see here where I came in, and that whole part just basically fell off. And it's kind of like, did they actually even glue this neck in? I'm starting to wonder, or if it was just lacquer that held it in place. I mean, I knew it was like glue, but I've never seen so little glue. But here you can see just a big dark blob of resin, basically, that they've just put in there to make the neck have this asymmetrical neck joint so that you can get up here with your hand and still have this round over. I don't know what I'm going to do with that yet. Hopefully I'll put the neck in somewhere so that I can sand this away. I haven't really looked at that yet, but I think that these two woods will go neatly together. I still have the headstock here to remove, but you've seen how I did the back, so I'll be back in a minute once I've done that. And then basically all we have to do is sand this neck, because it's a little bit rough to feel right now. Okay, so I'm back again, because I found another thing with this neck that is kind of weird. When I had lacquer on it, this joint looked perfectly fine. It's kind of hard, you can't really see in there, but it looks okay. But now I can see that they've just put a piece of tape in there. All of this is it's just tape. And there isn't actually like a real access to the truss rod. I mean, you can have it look like this. There's nothing really wrong with it, but to just tape it over. I mean, come on. I wonder if this is one of those guitars that would break the day the warranty goes out or something. But anyway, now the neck is basically done. Now we just have to do some work to fit them together. Okay, so I'm going to route the neck pocket right now. As you can see, it might look a little bit wonky, like why is it so big? And that's because if you look at the guitar neck, it has this tenon that goes out. And so we have to account for that, because I want the 16th fret on the end here. This is super simple. All you need to do is make sure that the center line that you have on your guitar body, you either have to draw this out or it's the glue line between the two pieces if you have a two-piece body. So if you don't see it, that's okay, but right here there is a line where the two body pieces join together, and down here is the line of the template, and that will make sure that everything gets routed straight. And well, that's about it. Let's route this sucker. Okay, so measure your tenon so you know how far down you need to go, and then you set up your router so that touching the body is 0, because this edge right here is the template, and if you measure from that, you're not going to cut nearly deep enough. This is the true 0, and you want to go down into the body. So we're going to set this up now. It depends on what kind of router you have, but mine has a stop on the side that lets me set my 0, and then I can just take what measurements I had, which was 17 millimeters, and I can go up and put this stop on 17 millimeters. And now when I push this down, it won't be able to go further. And then we just have to take this in a couple of passes, going back and forth and lowering it slowly and slowly. So let's see what happens. Don't forget to wear ear protection and eye protection.
So here is the body connected to the neck. It's all clamped in place. And if I take a pencil and I just draw a line on the underside, you're gonna get to see this real soon, as soon as I find a pencil that works. And then I just draw a line on the underside, and I mark where I believe they meet on the side. Just a mark on both. And it's just an indicator. So you just need to make a little tiny mark. And now we'll flip it over. Okay, so now we clamp the neck. And we remove it. And we can draw from the mark we had a line that connects them. Now we can work on this to make it look the way we want it, because like right now this line is a bit wobbly to me. So if I work on it a little bit and I smooth it out a little bit, I can make it into something that maybe looks a little easier on the eye and a little bit more round over and neat. Something that goes together with the rest. You can take something that has a round shape to it. This is a bearing, just something I had laying around. And you can use that to help you shape it. And now I'm just taking my jigsaw and I'm cutting. But I'm not cutting on the line, I'm cutting on the outside. And then I'm working my way into the line. If I plug it in. And now I'm just going to take my Japanese eraser file or whatever they're called, and I'm just gonna work my way in towards that line. I'm gonna move the camera. Don't worry about that, we fix it. It's gone. Now, you can do templates to cut things, but the best thing to do is to put the neck back in and feel with your hand how it feels, because nothing is ever going to be better than your hands just feeling things and you going, do I like this or do I not like this? Do I need to take more off? Go slowly and work your way towards what you like. I can see that I need to make this a little bit smoother to blend this edge here and this edge here in. I can also feel a little bit of a mid-low here, so I need to round it off a little bit more. But I'm gonna take the neck and I'm just gonna pop it in and I'm gonna feel with my hand, and I can feel that nothing is in the way. So I'm in the right space right now. But I can also see that the joint is a little bit outside. There's a tiny little lip here. So I can go a little bit further in without any problems. Yeah, so I can still feel that there is a tiny lip here. Now it's down to maybe 1/2 mil or something, so I'm almost done. And you just go back and forth until you're satisfied. This is one of those things, like, It doesn't take much, but it gives a lot. Okay, so now the neck is in and the connection between is perfect. I can play my hand all the way up and nothing is in the way. Keep in mind I haven't done the round over, so it's not round overed on this end, but once I've done that, it's going to be perfect. Now I'm going to take a quick break and sand the entire guitar. Yes, that was a stupid joke. And when I'm back, we're going to look at some other things that I need to do. But I feel like this is the time to sand it and get some of these weird lines from the planer out and just, yeah, see you in a bit. So, now I've sanded the body. It looks a little bit nicer. I've reshaped the headstock to a simpler and, in my opinion, nicer form, shape, nicer shape. Because I feel like I'm putting a lot of work into this, might as well not give credit to the ones who did all the mistakes. So now I'm gonna take and do the round over on the body, and then I'm gonna glue in the neck and seal up the edges. Okay, so now I'm going to glue in the neck, and I'm going to show you my gluing trick that I use, or I actually have two tricks that I do. And the first one is that I put tape along the side, like this. And the reason why I do that is because if there is any glue squeeze out, then the glue, I mean, if there is any glue squeeze out, when there is glue squeeze out, because there is gonna be glue squeeze out, it gets on the tape instead of on the wood. And instead of the wood absorbing glue and then it being like hard for it to take a finish, instead I can just instead I just put the tape down and I'm done with that. Now I usually go all around, but I'm not going to do this time because we're going to have to put solid color down because of this thing here. So I don't really care about the glue squeeze out there. I can just sand that off, and if it gets absorbed by a tiny bit of wood, it doesn't really matter. I can actually put this tape down like that and then take a razor and cut. Around like that, so much neater and nicer. Then we're just going to put glue down, and this is how you do it. You put some glue in, and then you take a stick and you smear it around. Make sure you get an even and nice coating all around. And don't worry about the whole, like, am I putting in too much? Am I putting down too much? Am I doing too little? If you make a nice even coat, something that looks maybe like, I don't know, the thickness of maybe a paper or something like that. And I know maybe you want to know the exact measurements of a paper, but you're gonna have to go and measure a paper yourself because it's too boring for me to do. And then you just try to make it look about as even as possible and go up to the edge. Maybe a tiny bit too heavy, but we're gonna squeeze the rest out, so don't worry. And then we just take the neck and
we put it in, we take our clamp, and we put some pressure on it. And something like that. And we're getting a little bit of squeeze out all around. And now is my other trick is you can make one of these clamping calls. I've shown you in a guitar life hack before, but you can also take lollipop sticks and use them for your clamps so that you don't press down your frets. I'm gonna move them over. And there comes the glue. And then we just try to remove as much of the squeeze out immediately as we possibly can. Just gonna tighten this down. Again, if you know that you're gonna do a solid color thing, you don't have to be crazy about these things. You just remove as much as you can, and that's gonna be good enough. Something like that. And now we're gonna leave this to dry over the night, which is perfect because it's too late in the evening anyway for me to continue. I'm just gonna take away some of the glue squeeze out on the sides that you might not be able to see from that camera angle, but it's right here. I'm gonna remove the tape as well because we don't need the tape to dry together with the neck, because otherwise we're gonna have to do some weird sanding work. But yeah. So I'm gonna go and watch a film. I think I'm gonna see the film Magnolia by Paul Thomas Anderson. I recommend you do that as well because it's an awesome film. And yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about that film, and I'll see you in the next video. We're gonna route the pickup cavity. I have everything set up and ready to go. All you have to do is match up the center line of your template with the center line of your guitar body, and obviously put it where you want the pickup. So let's just route this real quick and we'll get on to the next part. There you go. Easy peasy. Okay, so there you have it. This is the way it's gonna look, basically. Here's the pickguard. Take that off. And here's the pick up cover. And here's the route. And I put some tape just because I wanted to draw out where the pickguard is so that this would line up perfectly. Because it would be bad if I put this in a place where they were crossing in some weird way. Obviously this wouldn't sit like that, but you know what I mean. And also because I need to put out where I want to put the bridge. We're going to do that later. Now we're going to focus on the control cavity for the pots. It's going to go over here. You can't really see where, but on the side. Don't worry, I'm moving the camera soon. All I've really done since last video is I've sanded the guitar. I'm not done sanding it, but I did a first sanding, and then I put some plaster dip on the sides, and that's just to seal them up. So I want a center line that goes from this hole in the pickguard over here, so that when I go to drill the holes, they are parallel to the center line over here. So first, just to make it easier for myself, I am shortening the distance by moving the center line to the side, and then I am measuring out where that hole is. And now I can remove the pickguard. I can measure the distance to the from that mark over here to the new drawn center line, and I can line these up over here, and I can do a mark over here, and just re-measure. Always measure twice, or maybe even more. Yeah, you see, I was a bit off. And then I'm just going to connect them like so. And then I'm just going to double check my lines. And everything is okay. So now I have that line. And now we go on to the next part. So I stole the old measurements from the other guitar body, and I'm just gonna make a mark where the first control is supposed to go. This is a little bit fiddly, but there you go. And then the next one. And I don't really like that because it feels off. So I'm gonna move them closer. So this is where I want to put them. I feel like that's a nice distance, but I'm gonna move them over here and have them a little bit closer to the actual pickguard. And if we fetch our control knobs, I think that might look nice. Obviously, you know, if you have templates for this kind of guitar, or you have this kind of guitar, you can take measurements for those things. But I just want to make a cool guitar. I don't need this to be an exact copy of a Gibson. Okay, so the next step is to just drill 2 pilot holes. And first, I'm taking an awl and I'm making a mark. And the reason why I do this is because it's much easier for a drill bit to find where to drill if there is a dent in the wood for it to fall into than if it's just slipping around like this. And I suggest you do that to every hole you're ever going to drill, be it metal or wood or a guitar or a house or anything that you're making. Make sure you basically do this so that you don't mistakenly wander off with your drill bit and ruin whatever you're gonna make. It's very easy to wander with the drill bit. And if you wander with the drill bit, it doesn't really matter that you've measured things out, because you didn't drill where you measured out to drill anyway. Okay, so now I'm gonna drill this. I'm using my pillar drill because that's the way you're supposed to do it. You'll get a 90-degree hole that is perfect. But you don't need to do that. If you're really skilled with a hand drill, you can do that. I do it with a hand drill most of the times because I'm lazy, but I don't want to show you how to be lazy. I want to show you how you actually do it correctly. So this is how you do it correctly. We're gonna need to drill a hole from here to here. So what I'm doing is that I'm trying to eyeball where the center of this hole here is. Something like that. And where the corner of the pick up cavity is. Something like that. And now I'm gonna take this side here and I'm gonna measure out where the middle of that is. So now I have a line that goes over the body and to the side, and I have where I want to drill it. So I'm taking my awl, as I always do, and I make a mark of where I want to drill. I kind of push it in a little bit deeper than you might need, but that's just because we are drilling. We're going to drill in a weird angle. We're not drilling straight into it, 90-degree out in. We're going to drill from the side, or it's going to feel like we're drilling from the side. I'm going to show you. Wait. Okay, so now we're going to start drilling. I have my drill bit in the machine, and I'm just going to try to line it up as good as I can with the line I've made here. And we're starting off with a small bit because that's very easy to control, and then we're going to move on. So I'm trying to figure out where it goes. I plug it into the side. I try to keep it straight. If you want to, you can have a ruler on the side and you can hold it in place with the line like this and keep the bit in the hole and straighten it up. Now you have to look dead from above, so you're not able to see this correctly because the camera is from the side, but if you look straight up you can angle it so that the drill bit will go in straight. And when you're done with that, you have to look from the side to make sure you don't go wrong like that. Now this might sound like this is a super difficult thing to do, but it's not. It also doesn't need to be extremely perfect. If you're off by a mil like that, it's going to work fine. And if you're off by a mil like that, it's probably going to work out fine too. But do everything in your power to make sure that when you drill this, you're as close to perfect as possible, because you don't want to go out from the back or something like that. So just take your time. And go slow. And you can take out the drill bit and you can put it in the hole, and you can look from the side. From here I can see that I'm probably off by 1 degree or something, so it's probably going to come out a little bit closer to this side here than this side. But from the side, this side, up and down, kind of hard to show. I would say that I'm very close to 90 degrees. Okay, so to drill such a long hole, you're going to need one of these. This is a regular bit, it's just a very long one. They are not very expensive. Obviously, you're going to have to check where you live to figure out how expensive they are. And all we're going to do is basically we're just going to come in the end here, and we're just going to drill all the way through to the side here. And because we've already started the hole and it goes to somewhere around here, that hole is going to guide this the rest of the way. And so we're just going to go in a bit, come out, pull the dust with us out, go back in again, and back and forth as many times as we need. Maybe feel this, don't feel this edge because you're going to burn yourself, but feel a little bit closer, and if it gets too hot, just stop and wait a couple of minutes and continue, because you don't want this to overheat. I've had this happen before. You drill, it gets overheated, you don't think about it, it snaps, and then you have a rod of metal that is embedded inside of the guitar, and you have to figure out somewhere else to drill. Plug this hole up, drill a new channel, have the input jack somewhere else, because you're not going to be able to get that one out. At least not in an easy way that's worth doing. So we're going to put it in the drill. Remove the tape. And then just go in here. And go slowly and back out and accidents happen sometimes. What happened this time was that I drilled through the back. I know I showed you all how not to drill through the back, and then I drilled through the back myself, but there is a reason why that happened, and it's actually my own fault because I didn't think enough about this. So learn from my mistakes.
These can bend and get crooked really easily. So every time you're going to use them, you need to check them. I didn't do this, I was in a hurry to make a video, and I'll have to pay for it. You hold them up against the edge like this, and you check that they are aligned. If they aren't, you throw them away, and you buy a new one. Because even if you have a perfect hole, these will start to wander inside if they are a little bit crooked. There are two ways you can fix the issue. You can try to match up the grain wood with a cut off piece and blend it in and make it seamless. It's not that hard to do if you're patient and you spend the time. Or you can do what I did, which is I just painted the back just like I did the sides. So we're gonna have a solid color back and sides and have a nice wood grain pattern on the front. I'm a little bit bummed out about it also, this all, but it's gonna be okay. It's gonna look nice in the end. But remember to always check them and make sure that they are straight and nice and that there's nothing wrong with them, so you don't make this mistake that I did. I only made this mistake because I was in a hurry, and you should never be in a hurry when you're building guitars. So here are the excess holes from when we drilled the holes for the control cavity. That's where the pots are going to go out, but obviously on the other side. So I'm just going to put this here, and I'm going to try to space it evenly, something like this maybe. First I just mark these out to try and see if the holes will be somewhat in a correct place. I think I'm going to move this over a little bit on one side, something like that. Yeah, I think that's going to be okay. I'm kind of eyeballing this right now. You can make a template, and you can make, and I'm just going to go around like this, something like that. See if we can fill this in a little bit, something like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my router and I'm going to freehand it, and my router has this sidebar thing right here. So all I have to do is I have to take the blade or the bit right down to 0, which is touching the body, and then I can just put this pole down there, and I can take this. So now it's touching there, that means that it's stopped there. So I move this up to where this fits in there neatly, and then I just lock it down, and now it won't be able to get any closer. When I start this up and I cut it down, it won't be able to go further down than that. And it will be the perfect fit for this one. So I'm just going to cut all of this that I've drawn out so that this fits inside. And then I'm going to come back and measure how much space I need to take out for the actual control knobs and electronics that are going into this guitar. So let's just put on some safety gear and then start freehanding this out. So now you can see it's pretty nice. We're gonna do some cleanup. Just take a tiny blade and cut away some of the burrs on the side. It's a good thing to make this not fit too well. I've seen some people do that, and the problem is you never get them out. So see, this is maybe a bit too tight, so we're gonna have to
You see, you don't want to have to bend things up. It gets too tight. But we're gonna take a tiny file, I think would be a good idea. If you take one of these, flat side, won't cut into the wood. Just work along the edges and smooth everything out. Take a knife. You can round over everything with a little bit of sandpaper as well. Just trying to make it look neat. I'll see if it fits again. That's better, but I think I have to work on it a little bit more. Okay, so now we have to make the actual hole for everything to go in. So I'm just going to start off by putting this in here and marking out where I'm going to drill the holes for the screws. And I kind of like that edge there. I want something similar there. I'm just eyeballing this. You can obviously make a template if you want to. I don't really think I need to, since this is a private guitar. So I'm starting off by drilling 2 holes. I've made some marks. And I'm just going to try to see if I can align. Okay, so the next step is to just put a ruler up against these 2 corners here, where corners is maybe the wrong word, but the edges maybe you could call it, between where these 2 holes that I drilled have matched up. And that's just so we can have something to follow, because the next step is to take our Japanese saw and we're just gonna start scoring and cutting in this line. You don't have to do it this way, but this is how I like to do it. I'm just starting to cut in. So now I've cut with the saw, and you don't have to cut that far down, just a couple of mils, you know, maybe 3 mils. And we're just going to take a chisel and start cutting away some of this wood, saving this edge, the outer edge, and just removing the wood in the middle. And we do our best to keep this side as clean as possible. You can come in from this side and peel away. Something like that. And now I'm just gonna hog this out. You can use a drill bit if you want to, or you can take the router and just remove this, and then I'm gonna let the bearing ride on this side to clean it up. So we basically used the wood inside the body to make its own template. Kinda neat. Okay, so now I'm gonna try and put the bridge in its right place, and I'm just holding it up to the line. I have one line going this way, and that line lets me know where it has to sit for the intonation. And then I have the strings going this way, and I'm just trying to make sure that they are evenly spaced so that the guitar is easy to play without the strings fretting out. And once I am happy, I take a pencil and I do a half circle. Like that. And then I have these tiny little tools that I've shown in one of my guitar life hacks that I use to find the middle of every circle ever. So all I have to do is basically find a circle that I
think is the right. And then I will know where to drill. And I can just take my awl and make sure that the mark is inside the circle, but also on the line, like that. And then I do the same for this side. And then I can just double check with my bridge again to make sure that I like what I see, which I do, and I can remove the tape. So I have my mark there. I'm just gonna put on ear protection, start the drill, and drill a pilot hole. I don't focus so much on the depth right now, and I don't focus on the size so much right now. I'm just taking a size that I know is too small, and I'm gonna work my way up to it later. Okay, so here's the body. I have some stain on the side. You can use whatever kind of stain for this that you want to. I'm using some spirit-based stain, and I'm using a pretty broad brush, and I'm just gonna go along the side of the edge like this. And by doing that, I get an even line across. Because we're going to make that teardrop shape, we don't really need to care about what it looks like right on the upper horn. And I'm just going to take this paint and I'm just going to go back and forth a couple of times and let it naturally bleed out. Something like this. Cover this area now real quick. And I don't care too much about the sides right now because I have plans for that. This is going to get spray painted and we're going to clean this up. We're just going to try to get some coverage. The reason why I like to use Spirit is because it flows out and becomes pretty neat and even without too much trial. So I can just put on a thick layer and it will sort of almost solve itself. Something like that. I'm going to take a piece of paper and I'm going to work this area here a little bit with the paper, just because it's a little bit too much. Something like that, looks really nice. And now I have watered down, or in my case spirit downed stain, so it's just weaker. And I'm gonna take some of this and I'm just gonna go across this area again and try to blend it in. As you can see, it's moving across the area and just sort of flooding it with spirit based. And if you want to do this with watercolors, you can definitely do this. You don't have to do it with spirit based just because I'm doing it. You can do it however you want to. Gonna put more and more on and let it flood out. And don't worry if it doesn't look perfect immediately, because we're gonna make it look awesome in a bit. Now I'm taking some paper and I'm just gonna push this around. And I'm going in circles, just trying to blend colors. I'm gonna go back into this original brown and I'm just put some down, and it's gonna lie on top because everything is too wet right now, and I'm just gonna start blending it again, trying to get an edge that disappears, something like that. Just gonna continue working this back and forth for a bit, and I'll be back really soon when I'm at least somewhat close to happy with it. So here's the body now. It's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm gonna do the same thing to the neck. All I did was I did what I showed you, but I went back and forth and I put on color and took it off and went back and forth until I was happy. So just do that. Just keep on applying and removing and going back and forth until you're happy. And eventually you will be happy. So let's do the neck. Okay, so now I'm gonna continue with the neck. And what I'm gonna start off with is that I'm gonna add just some here. I have some paper ready so that don't soak up too much. Just gonna add some on both sides and try to put down so that you get some overspill, but not so that it starts dripping, because you don't want it dripping. Then I'm trying to add some up here so that it becomes like a nice curve, something like that. It's a little bit sloppy, but as you already know, we don't need it to be perfect just yet. And then I'm gonna take my other blend that is more of a blended out, and I'm gonna add that in to do this fade thing. And that's where you really put the work in and try to make it look nice. First we just put down some colors to have something to work with, and then we start blending them in. And hopefully you can see that we're starting to get a nice transition, and then we're gonna put down some more on the edge just to darken it up a little bit. I'm gonna go back and forth with this until we're happy, just putting on color, wiping it away, putting on color, wiping it away. And up here where the grey meets the natural wood, I'm just going to try to blend in, because we are going to put down some lacquer later on. And I'm going to do the same thing up here. I think I'm going to add some paint, try to blend it out. We also have a scarf joint here, so it will work nicely together. Something like this, I think. Just work it back and forth. Try to create that nice blended feeling. Two colors meeting up. Well, not two colors, but the natural wood and something like that, I think. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing with the headstock. I'm just going to try to add some of the dark brown around the edge and work it in. And then before it dries, I'm just going to apply more to darken it up, trying to put it down evenly as I can without making any really hard lines, because you don't want any hard lines when you're doing, I suppose you could call it a sunburst. And then I'm just going to add in the blended out version, put it down and work it in with the brush, and then take some paper and move the finish around a little bit to something like this. And then I'm going to put down some more. Something like that maybe. And now we're just going to leave it to dry, and I'll be back in a couple of seconds. Okay, so I don't have any sanding sealer at the moment, but that's okay, because you can take some resin, for example, and use as a makeshift sanding sealer. And all I do is I take it and apply it, and I just smear it out like this, and I put the resin down, and I do everything I can to put a nice even thin coat, and just smear it out as neatly as I can, and try to not get any weird bubbles or anything. This is just to cover up. It has nothing to do with how the guitar is going to look later, so don't have to focus too much, but try to make an even and nice job and get as thin a coat as you can possibly get on. That's why I'm using a plastic scraper, because I don't want to scrape the wood, but I also don't want to leave brush strokes or anything like that. Just mix up some epoxy. You can use any kind of epoxy, it doesn't really matter. I mean resin, you can use any kind of resin. You can use epoxy, it's the same thing. Something like that. Okay, so now we just have to wait for the epoxy to dry. And in the meanwhile, here are some nature pictures from the forest close to where I live. So now that the resin on top of the guitar has had a full day to dry, I'm just gonna even it out. I don't know if you can see it, but it has some little marks that needs to go.
And so I'm going to start off by using some 400 grit sandpaper, and it's just to knock off the top. I'm going very lightly. I'm basically just using the weight of my own hand to push down the sandpaper. I don't force it down or anything. I'm just going very lightly like this. Okay, so now that I've gone through it, it's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be at this stage. I'm just knocking off all the tops. The clear coat that is going over is going to even things out. But I'm just going to go over it with some finer grit sandpaper, just to be sure, and I'm just taking off the very top. Since I'm painting the sides and I'm spray painting everything, I'm going to have to put clear coat over it. But if you made a guitar that you were just going to keep all natural, or just have a stained wood or something, you could actually put a thicker coat of resin over it, and then just sand that back and make it perfect, and then polish it up. And you could have a resin finished guitar instead of a lacquered guitar. And that would actually probably be a better finish than lacquer, because lacquer isn't that great of a finish if you're one of those people that wants something that works, that holds up for a very long time and isn't easily damaged. Obviously there are a lot of other finishes you can do, and it's actually, if you're building your first guitar or something like that, the resin finish is maybe the easiest finish you can do. So if you want to, I could maybe next time I build a guitar, I could show you how to do it, if that's something you think is interesting. You have to leave a comment below though and tell me, because it's not something I usually do when I build a guitar. So now the time has come that I've been waiting for, I hope you've also been waiting for, and that is, I'm going to put some paint down. I'm going to start off with the headstock here, and I've taped it off because I don't want any spill on the side. And I've also taped off the fretboard. All you need to do is basically put tape down where you don't want any paint, basically. You don't need to see me do that. It's fairly basic and easy. And then all I've done is I've taken something flat and I've burnished down the tape so that it's kind of air sealed. And now I'm going to take my spray paint and I'm just going to go and mist it over. I hope you can see it. And taking light passes and just going back and forth until I have something that looks even. And look at it from different angles. Something like that. I don't know how well it shows up on the camera, but this is a very dark brown. I think I'm going with a dark brown burst. And then you just leave the color to dry for a couple of minutes, maybe 2 or 3, and then you go over to the body. Okay, so now it's time to do the body. And first, I keep the tape on the neck because I really want the sharp edge where no one can see anything. But I don't tape off the blend part here because I'm going to blend it. I know some people do the whole cover the front of the body and then have like an edge of nothing so that the spray will go over. But I like to freehand it with the spray paint instead. I think that gives me better control. And if you practice on some scrap wood, after like, I don't know, 10 minutes of doing that, you will be good enough at it that you don't really need a weird paper template anyway. So let's see what happens. I apologize if it's hard to see what I'm doing, but I'm basically using the fact that the paint comes out like cone shape, and I'm using that to do the fade. So if you spray from the right angle, which you will learn by experimenting, you won't have any of those spray paint issues that some people might have. And apologize if it's hard to see what I'm doing, but I have to go somewhat fast with this. Maybe I should invest in a GoPro or something. And I do the side first, and then I'll go and do the back. And I just move the body around, make sure I hit everything from the side. Maybe this is a better angle. I'm going from the back. I don't worry so much about this right now because I'm just going to do an even pass afterwards. But now I'm just lightly trying to... You want as little color on as possible because you don't want to create any runs. And obviously, it goes without saying, I hope, but I'm going to say it anyway. You have to wear a mask. I'm obviously talking to you guys while I'm doing this, but you have to wear a mask when you're doing this, and or be in a very well ventilated area. It's really bad for you to breathe in these chemicals. I have 2 fans, industry fans, running right at the moment, so I'm good. At least I hope I am. Something like this. And now I'm gonna try to just do even coats to color in the back. And I keep about a hand's worth of distance, maybe, somewhere around that. And it's all just to try to create an even... I start spraying here, I stop spraying here. It's kind of hard to show because I want to concentrate on the guitar that I'm actually building. Trying to get an even coat. Something like that. I'll be back in a couple of minutes and doing a new one. Okay, so I want some sunburst around the body as well. So I'll hold it and I'll just go across like this, shooting on the outside. And I just sort of try to move my I don't know if you can see that, but it looks fairly decent. And if you just have patience, it will turn out all right.
So, the guitar is painted. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean it off to make sure everything looks nice, and then I'm going to clear coat it. But I'm not going to film that because I'm going to go back and forth taking breaks, and it's going to take about a day to do. Just going like twice every hour, back and forth, putting on a layer. And all I do is basically the same thing. It's just you take the guitar, you move the can back and forth. The only difference is I am gonna coat the entire guitar, the sides, the back, the neck, the front, every part, and also the side here where I have taped it off. Obviously not the front, but you don't need to see that. You've already seen how I painted the whole guitar. Okay, so the wiring is actually kind of easy. You have a pickup, looks like something like that. You have two wires that comes out of it, and one is ground. Let's make it this one. We'll make it G here or something. That's ground. And then you have two pots. They look something like this, and they have three little legs that stick out. It's the ones you use to basically put wires into, as you can see here. And then you have an output jack as well, something like this. And all you need to do is you take the ground wire from the pickup, connect it to all of the parts. It is super simple. I understand if people get confused, but it's basically just a question of grounding. You have a wire that comes from the bridge. Let's make the bridge over here, and some saddles. And you have a ground wire that comes from there as well. That's all you have. You need to ground everything together. Then the pickup has a lead wire. I'll make an L here. And that goes there. And then, because this is basically a resistor, but a resistor that doesn't have a set value, but one that you can change by moving the knob. So it's basically you're just pulling that wire through the entire pot by soldering to it, and then the connection comes out on this side, and it goes to the output jack on the lead of the output jack. So if you look at a jack, you have the ground, it's the connecting to the shaft or whatever you want to call it. Make some nice jokes in the comments below. And then you have the tip, that's the lead. And you just need to make sure that they connect to the output jack the correct way. Here I have an output jack, and as you can see when I put it on, the ring here, which is ground, gets connected to the sleeve, and this little thing that sticks up here gets pushed up against the tip. And that's how you know that they are connected. You usually use different colors, but I only have black pen, so if this is confusing. Then you take a capacitor and you ground it to the back of the pot, so that it's and then you put it into the middle lug. And the reason why you do that is because when you blend the pot, you're asking how much of it you want to go to ground, basically. And then you connect it in to the same, you put a lead wire in where the pickup goes into it, so you can decide how much of the signal you want to blend in. I hope this makes sense. It will make sense in a second when we actually do it. So you have ground wire, connects everything to everything, and then you have a bridge ground wire as well. You have a lead wire that goes to the in of the connections on the pot and connects the tone to the volume, and then the out where the signal comes out, which is the middle one, to the jack, so that you can basically just decide how much volume you want, basically. You could also just have both of these two wires going directly to the jack if you don't want any controls. And if you want to switch because you have multiple pickups, which is not something we're going to do on this guitar, but then you would just have the switch in between here. And you would have the switch here and the different pickup wires coming to it, and then a wire from the switch to the volume pot. So let's now wire this up. So if this is looking confusing, it won't anymore. What I do is I measure out the holes that I have in the guitar, and then I put them on a piece of scrap wood that I'm going to throw away anyway, and then I can just drill holes and put my pots through. So I have a cap here, soldered and grounded off, just like we already talked about. And now we just need to start putting in the wires. And so we're going to start off with a ground wire. So the first thing we need to do is ground the connections to the back of the pot, because otherwise it won't really be grounded. So we put the leg back a bit, and we heat up a bit of solder, and now we can start putting down our different wires. Usually you will use black wires as your ground wires, so you put some solder on the wire, you heat it up, you press them together, feed some solder into the connection, you hold it down and you wait a couple of seconds so it cools. You let go, you can tug a little bit on the wire, see it still works, and you pull the wire to the next component. Don't pull them tightly, have them a bit loose, and then you cut off a bit and you strip the wire back like so. You put a bit of solder on the wire, and you put a bit of solder on the component. Like that. And put the wire in. Heat it up. Feed a bit of more solder. Get a good connection. Hold the wire in place with a screwdriver or something similar, and hold it there for a second or two, and then you let go. And now that wire is in place. Now the next thing we need to do is we need a connection wire for the pot. And so we're going to take this tiny bit of wire. You usually use red for your lead. Put a bit of solder on the wire. Feed it through the hole in the pot. Might be hard to see what I'm doing. I'm sorry if my hands are in the way. Feed it through. Leave it to cool. And then we feed it through that one right there. Now, this is not the pickup that we're gonna use, but let's pretend it's the one we're gonna use, because usually you will maybe pre-wire everything and then afterwards put it into the guitar and then pull the wires through the holes in the guitar, and then you will solder in the pickup. But we are not there yet, since we don't have the body right now, so I'll just put that in there and we'll ground the pickup. And so sometimes a pickup will have like a white wire and a bare wire, and then, you know, the bare one is the one that is ground. So I'm just gonna heat them up, something like that. It doesn't look that nice right now maybe, but it's okay because we're not gonna actually use that pickup. I am just putting this pickup in here because I want to make it easy for you to see what it is I'm talking about, in case you find it hard to understand what it is I'm talking about or something. And then the next thing we need is a lead wire for the connection out to the output jack, just like I've already said. So we're just gonna pre-tin this wire and put it in, something like that. And then we're gonna do the same thing on the back. We're gonna pre-tin this wire. We're gonna put some more solder down on the pot because we're gonna need it. And then we have two wires here that we connect to the jack. The ring is a ground wire and the lead is the tip. And then the last thing we need to do before this is done is we need to add the ground wire for the bridge. And it's simple, just the same thing as we've already done. You just add a bit of solder to the wire and then you put this ground wire in too, just like the rest of them. You hold it in, leave it, and so yeah, that's basically it. You can pre-tin these wires as well. And you can make yourself one of these. I've shown you in another video, and it makes it very easy to visualize and also to hold it in place when you're working. And so I can very easily see now, oh, this is the ground wire, it needs to go there. So let's put it there, even though I need to remove it afterwards, just so you can see how the wires are supposed to go. Something like that. So here we basically have the finished kit. You have the pickup over here, gets connected here, the ground wire goes to ground, and the lead wire goes to the first pin that goes all the way around and comes out in the middle pin that goes to the jack. You have all the ground wires that connects all the connections, so everything is grounded. it goes to the bridge, which is the one we have here that isn't connected because we don't have a bridge right now to connect it to. So you're just gonna have to imagine it. All we need now is basically we're gonna have to remove this pickup, obviously, because we're not gonna use it. And we're gonna remove the jack so it fits in the guitar. But then we're just gonna drop everything in, connect this wire to the bridge, and then we're gonna solder this in place and solder in the new pickup with all the wires pulled through the guitar body. I know this was maybe not the most interesting part of the guitar building video, but I hope it helped, and it's something you need to know if you're gonna build guitars. So I hope you learned something. Let me know in the comments below if you did. Okay, so let's get started with cleaning all the things. Okay, so I'm just gonna start by taking the part, and I'm gonna take some steel wool, and I'm just gonna go back and forth and clean it up, and fairly quickly you're gonna see that it becomes all nice and shiny. Don't press too hard, we don't want to go through. The parts have some dings because I've reliced them, and we're not going to be able to take that out, so don't like go crazy and try to do that, because those are indents in the part. It's not something you can polish out. You're just cleaning it up and seeing how well we can do it. Something like that maybe. Next is on these. You can see they look a bit grimy and dirty, and so we're just gonna take some steel wool and go across it and try to clean it up as best as we can. Again, the part has been dinged up pretty bad, so might be a little bit difficult. Hold it in place, go back and forth, and be sure to not put too much pressure. I know it's kind of hard to say how much pressure you do because it's a feel thing, but it's better to put too little pressure and go slow than to put too much. And something like that maybe. It's not perfect, but close. Maybe a little bit more. All the screw heads looks a little bit wonky too, as you can see. Dirty, grimy, you know. So we're just gonna take some steel wool and we're just gonna go over all the screws lightly, because we don't wanna go through the chrome, just wanna polish them back up. Don't overdo it. Then you might have to buy new ones. I think it looks pretty okay. And then we have the tuners, and they are going to be probably the most difficult ones because they have so many parts. Just go back and forth and up and down, around. And again, we're not going to be able to take away the marks, but we are going to be able to make them look nice and clean. And I really like relic guitars, so I like to do. I'm thinking of maybe making a Stratocaster relic. I love relic Stratocaster. It's basically the only guitar I really like reliced. If that's something that any of you are interested in watching, let me know. I might decide to film that then. It looks pretty nice now. Only thing left now is yellow paint. See if we can remove it with the steel wool. It should come off really easy. It does. And just to give you a comparison, here is what it looks like on the side I haven't really touched, and then if I turn it around you can see basically white new plastic. So you can actually do this to any tuners. So if you have tuners that have been on a guitar for maybe 10 years or something, and you think they look a bit dull and boring, like they could need some love, cleaning them off and, you know, taking care of them might be a really good thing to do. I have some tuners on my old Mustang guitar that could really need some love, so maybe I'll do that later. They are looking very dull. And you see, it doesn't take that much time. I don't even need to like speed this video up or anything. Not that I ever do that. No, but seriously, you don't need to put that much force into it, and you don't need to work on it that long. It's only been a couple of minutes, and it looks, I mean, comparing the tuners, two tuners, an old and I mean, not an old, a cleaned up one, unclean one, and they look, yeah, it looks good. So I'm gonna do all of the tuners and all of the screws, but I'll be back really soon with the next part. Okay, so now I've cleaned all the tuners and they look pretty good. They're not perfect because they've been reliced, so they have some scratches and dings on them. You can't really do anything about that, but that's also okay. The guitar will get scratches and dings, and eventually I'll probably, you know, have to relic it to make it look, you know, good anyway, because sadly to say, I kind of bust my guitars. Anyway, I like the tuners the way they are right now, but I also want to, while they're off a guitar, sort of take care of them a little bit. And I'm gonna show you how I put oil on the tuners so that they are easier to move. But I thought, just to teach you guys something and not just make this video about a guitar building, I'll show you some other tuners as well, so that you, if you have a guitar that has tuners that are a little bit stuck, you can do what I'm going to show you now and use that to basically just make your tuners better again if they feel a little bit stuck or something. And so we'll do one of these and then we'll do some others as well. You can buy synthetic oil. It's used mostly for bikes, but you can use it for guitar parts. I've used this for many years and I haven't had a problem yet with any of my guitars or any tuners I've put it on. And different tuners you go a little bit different about. Most people know that these kinds of tuners have a tiny little hole at the top, and all you have to do is put the top on it like this and squeeze it a little bit so that it flows in, and then you move the tuner around, turn it like this so that it gets moved around in there. Just try to squeeze it in, and then you let it rest with this facing upwards so that the oil doesn't seep out, and you leave it for maybe half an hour like that. There are other kinds of tuners, like here for example I have these I have a couple of groover tuners, and you can't really open them up. So what you need to do is you have to unscrew this part right here, put that to the side, you take this and you pour it down on top of the shaft and into the groove that you screw into, and you just let it go in there, and slowly it will work its way in. You move the tuner around a little bit like this and it will sip in, and then you take and you screw this back on so that it won't fall out, and it will also help force it in. And now that's on there, and you just move this about for a bit and it works fine. If you have maybe like an old Squire guitar or something, they come with tuners like this. Don't mind the nail polish. I was a teenager at one point too, and as you can see they are a little bit, almost always a little bit easy to move like that, and that's because that's where you pour it. You can take these off, but they can be fiddly to put back on, and it's much easier to just put a drop on there, let it sink in, and while it's sinking in you just sit here and you screw it around like this, back and forth for a couple of minutes while it goes in. Then you screw the top on, just like on this kind of tuner, and it's great. Then there are some tuners that look like this, and they are the easiest ones, but you have to keep a close eye on them, because obviously if you do this on the back of the guitar and then you turn the guitar over, you will have a mess. You need to put less on these, so really a tiny drop, because you don't want a lot on these because they have an open back. And then you can just move it around, and you just smear it around, and if you look really closely you can see that you can actually see the oil being squished out in all directions. Most tuners that look like this have a cover that goes over, and it has two tiny little legs that holds it in place. Sometimes it's 4. On the side you can see the little notch here on the side, and you just bend them back and you can take it off. You obviously have to take the tuner off the guitar to be able to get to those legs so you can start turning it. But that's basically all you have to do, and then you have to go over all your tuners and you just squeeze it in, take the next tuner, hold it in, squeeze it in. So here I have the cover for the pickup, and as you maybe can see, it has a bunch of scratches, some dirt and grime on it, and so we're gonna see if we can clean it up a little bit. I'm gonna start off with steel wool and just go back and forth, and then side as well. Looks a lot better already. And then I'm gonna use some wet and dry sandpaper, smooth it out even more. Always move in the same direction so you don't get weird scratches. I'm gonna fold it. And last part is I'm gonna buff it. It becomes a little bit shiny again. You can see it. Just go back and forth like this. I don't know how well the camera picks it up, but it looks maybe not new, but at least it doesn't look relict and grimy. Okay, so here's the bridge that I've made, and I'm just gonna try and see if, because it was a black one to begin with, I'm gonna see if I can clean it up. I want to make everything look nice and chromed, so if I can't make this look nice, I'm gonna go and buy a new one that is actual chrome, and maybe I'll show you how I did the whole cutting in the thing or something. We'll see. You can see it becomes less dull really quick. So let's continue and see what happens. Yeah, I'm gonna continue cleaning it a little bit and we'll see what happens. Okay, so I've decided that cleaning this up and trying to make it look new is not worth it. It has a bunch of dinks and scratches and it's been messed up too much by the wear. I don't know if you can see this, but the strings have basically cut into it and it's crooked, it's not straight any longer. So I'm gonna order a new bridge. I don't know when it will be here. It will probably take a long time for it to get here because lately things take too long to get anywhere. So I think I'm gonna go back to the old bridge, the one that the guitar came with. It's a copy of a Wilkenstein bridge, so if you look at it you might think, whoa, but that's it's better, but it's, you know, a Wilkinson bridge, but it's you know, it's not better because I have other Wilkinson bridges and they are not made of that, whatever that is. It's just made to look like one so that you would think you get better parts than you actually get when you buy the guitar. We'll just put that bridge on if the other bridge hasn't arrived by the time I have to put this guitar back together. And we'll see what happens. Yeah, so that's the hardware part. We're basically done now. We only have like one last thing to do, and I'm gonna show you that now. Okay, so next thing we need to do is we need to clean up the screw heads because I reliced them as well. So we can't use steel wool because that will make a mess, magnets, but we can take a Scotch pad and we can move it gently over the tops to clean them off. And as you can see, it's almost already done. Or maybe you can't see. There they are anyway. So gently move them back and forth. Try not to scratch everything up. I know it can be really hard to get in between, but just move it one side to another. And then when we're cleaned it off, we take our drill again and we just move it across. Something like that, something like that. By doing that for just a couple of seconds, the screw heads look a lot shinier and newer and back to their normal state. Okay, so we're just gonna wet down the guitar, go over it with the sanding machine and just knock off the tops. We do the front and then the back and then the side and then the neck. So I'm just going to take some water and coat the guitar. Just trying to get it even. I don't like having a bunch of water everywhere, so therefore I do it like this. And then start sanding. Depending on
how good of a job you've made clear coating the guitar, the faster it will take. If you have a really bumpy and weird surface, you will have to sand a lot, but if you have a nice and even surface, it will go really fast. And as you probably can see, hopefully, there are some dull spots and some spots that are still nice and shiny, and the dull spots is where it's leveled. So we just have to go back and forth like this. We just take some water, put on a nice even layer, and we start sanding again, and we just continue going back and forth. Okay, so after you're done, we're just gonna put on some wax polish. I use car wax because that is easy to get a hold on. It's not that hard to get. Just put some over the entire body, go one side, other side, and then side to side, and you just go through the entire body. One thing by one after another. You let that sit for a moment, and then just drill soft sponge and some elbow grease. Okay, so my first little trick, that when you go to drill out these, if you remember I said I only care about making pilot holes. If you make pilot holes, there are two benefits. First off, more accuracy where you are going to drill when you're finally done, but also you have to make a little hole to get into this cavity to put in a ground wire. And if you almost all the time when you drill from the corner down like this, you're gonna muck up the edge a little bit. So if you have something like this size hole, and you drill, and then you're gonna drill a bigger hole, that little mark that becomes very visible will probably not be a part of the end result where the ferrule goes in. And that's a good thing, because we don't need that. So now I'm going to drill these out so I can plug these in. And first I'm going to measure these. And then I am going to drill. I'm going to use one of these to get started so that the bit won't wander. And I'm just going to drill down to 10. And then I can switch it out and drill the rest of the way. I just take this, I hold it like that, then I know the depths, and I can stick this part down and see that it's gone down far enough. Something like that. Perfect. Okay, so the next thing I do is I find the little hole that I made and I push a ground wire through, and in one end I have stripped away a bunch of cable, and this part is maybe a little bit fiddly. I try to curl it around the exposed pole piece, and I try to tug it in between so that the wire will get pinched up against the metal as I'm forcing this down. You can bang this in, you can push it in, there's a lot of different things you can do. What I like to do is hold the guitar up and take one of these clamps and just with the force of screwing in, pushing it in. And that will most of the time allow me to press it into the body slowly without any real issues. And I just go back and forth, I release the clamp, and I go and I clamp it down again, and I go like that a couple of times until I'm happy with it and I'm certain that it's down. The next part is just to screw in the poles for the bridge. And to feed the ground wire from the bridge into the cavity and out the back. Something like that. Okay, we put the wires from the pickup through. It's a little bit fiddly because this one has one of those metal shield wires, so they love to bundle up. You're just gonna have to try to see if you can get it in there. But if you can't, what you do is you solder something to the other end. And now you can take this wire that I've soldered together with it, and I can feed this one through instead. And I can basically force the other wire through. Lift this up, take the other wire, and just pull it, and there we have it. And then we can just put the pickup in place, something like that, and we'll drill some holes, something like that, and we'll put the screws in, and then we'll just drive them in. I'll start off like that, and then I'll take and do the rest with a hand screwdriver, just so that I don't strip something or make some other mistake. Okay, so first off, I'm putting a towel down and I'm bending my wires over just to try and make sure that if I accidentally drop some solder, it won't damage the guitar. Hopefully. You never know what you're gonna do until you've done it. I'm gonna strip back this ground wire, which means removing the plastic. And then I am gonna put some solder down on it. I don't think you can see it, but that's what I'm doing. And then I'm gonna take this other wire and I'm gonna peel it back, and I'm gonna put some solder on this lead wire, and I'm also gonna put some solder on this wire that is basically just metal. And the reason is because that is actually the ground on this particular pickup. So I'm gonna put some on, and then I'm actually gonna feed this ground wire into it, just so that both the bridge and the pickup is grounded. And it's a little bit fiddly, but it's not that difficult. And then here we have the wire that we did earlier. You can put it back into the piece of wood where I had everything mounted. And if you remember how we did things last time, we need to connect these ground wires, but we also need to connect this signal for the lead. So we're going to try to pull this back, and we're going to try to feed it in there, hopefully without too much hassle, and something like that maybe. I'm going to add some more just to make sure the connection is solid, and then just try to push the cloth back as much as possible so that it doesn't touch the outer side of the pot. And then over here I'm just gonna try to melt them together. Ground of the pickup, which is this metal wire, and the soldering connection where all the other ground wires are connected to. Something like that. And then we're just gonna leave it for a couple of seconds, just like this. And then we're just gonna feel it and tug it a little bit to see if everything is nice and connected, which it is. And so now we can just remove this, push this to the side, and we can push the volume pot into its place and the tone pot into its place. And then these two wires will go out here to where the output jack is going to be, but we're going to connect that in a second. Okay, so the pots are through. We put the little metal ring on, and then we put the washer, and first we just finger tight it down, and we do that to both of them. We put the ring and finger tight down. And then I have one of these that I've built that allows me to get close and to screw it down. This one was the wrong size, so let me go and fetch the right one. Okay, so I feed the wire through here. It's a little bit tight, and the blue one is the ground wire. It gets connected to the sleeve, which is this one, and I just hold the two pieces together and let the solder from one part melt into the solder of the other. Something like that. Turn it around and I hold the other part. It's very difficult to film these sort of small things, but there it goes. As you can see, there is one and there is the other. And now I can just basically push it in, and now I just need to measure out and drill holes, and then we're good to go. So I start off by measuring the thickness, and then I divide it by half, and then I make a mark where I want to put the strap, and then I drill a hole. And then I put the strap button in place and I screw in the screw, just like I did before. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to push these in, and I'm going to start them off by hand just to try to make them align properly. And then I'm going to take a clamp with my plastic protectors on, and I'm just going to basically push them in by tightening the clamp like this. I know that there are tools out there to do this. StewMac, for example, sells them, and they're probably really good tools, but I just don't really see why you need them when you can do it like this. It's not something that is super difficult to do. You just press it in with a clamp, and you just have to go back and forth a little bit and have some patience. It only takes a couple of seconds. Something like that. Now we're on to the next one. We just do the same thing again. We just push it in place and take the clamp and squeeze it in. Okay, so it's time to put in the tuners. I'm just gonna drop one in like this. I'm gonna take the screws and align them with the holes that were already there when I started, and I'm gonna try to screw them in. Fuck. That wasn't supposed to happen. And just hold this in place while the super glue dries. Okay, so the guitar is done, and here it is. Only thing left to do is put some strings on it and see what it sounds like. So let's do that now.
So that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the guitar. And maybe you'll stick around to see the next thing I make and build and stuff like that. And I'll see you then. If you have any thoughts or questions about the guitar or anything I did in the video or in the video series, let me know. Take care now. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you liked the video, and I'll see you in the next one, hopefully. Bye bye.